Welcome everyone, and thank you for attending this town hall conversation with President Thompson. My name is Courtney McKenna, and I'll be assisting today as a moderator. During the next hour, we'll have a chance to hear from President Thompson. You'll notice that there's a Q&A box on the right-hand side of your screen. I'm going to begin by asking President Thompson some overarching questions, and then we'll open up the Q&A option for you to submit yours. Please know that anything that you submit in those Q&A boxes could be published for the entire group to see. So without further ado, President Thompson, welcome. How are you today?
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us this afternoon. I really appreciate your time, and I hope that you and your families, your loved ones and friends continue to be safe and healthy. Before I answer Courtney's question about how I'm doing, I wanted to first start by saying congratulations to all of you on your accomplishments, and congratulations on being accepted to Wentworth. This is a huge moment in your life. I'm sure you're very excited. I'm very excited about eventually meeting you, which I know that day will come. And I look forward to working with all of you and seeing your success along your college journey here at Wentworth. So I look forward to that day when I can see you here on campus. So in answer to Courtney's question, I'm doing well. Like everyone else, taking things a day at a time, staying busy, primarily working from home. I do happen to be in the office today, so if you see the neighborhood here in Boston out behind me, I am in the office today because we're doing some walk around to some of the facilities to get an understanding of some of the things we need to take into account as we do our planning for our reopening in the fall. But been spending a lot of time taking walks, getting outside with my wife Karen and our dog Brady. If you have a question about whether or not Brady is named after Tom Brady, he is not. It just happens to be a coincidence that my daughter named him Brady. And so doing everything that we can to stay busy. And I do recognize that a lot of people are being impacted by this pandemic in a variety of different ways and to varying degrees. And I have to say that personally, I have very little to complain about and much to be thankful for, and I hope the same is true for all of you. But welcome. I'm really excited to share some information with you this afternoon and answer some of your questions.
So President Thompson, we're going to spend a good amount of time talking about the impact of the pandemic and the steps that you've taken, our process around determining next steps. But I'm hoping that before we jump into that, you can provide us with a brief enrollment update.
Sure. So one of the things I'm happy to share with you, and I think it's important for you to know, is that we do have a normal number of students enrolled for the fall. I'm very happy to tell you, and you know the quality that you bring, but overall the class is a very high quality class in terms of the credentials that they're bringing. So it's a very robust class. We have over 1,100 new students who have deposited and held their place. We're anticipating a full class coming in the fall. And what I think this reflects, at least from my perspective, is the types of programs that we have here. We're educating people for work and success in fields where we expect that there's going to be continued strength in the job market. For example, we know construction and manufacturing are two industries that are among the very first industries to get going in the various reopening plans in different states. And I also think the strength of our enrollment numbers reflects our strong reputation and the quality of our education, which I'm very proud of. But we'll continue to accept some students over the summer. Some majors will be limited, as they always are. We have seen a growth in our graduate enrollment as well. It's up by about 30% so far. But your first year class, I think in many ways, will be as robust as ever. And we do, as we said, celebrate our small class size. And now with physical distancing, that will become even more important for the fall as we do our programming. But we'll be well prepared for you, and as I'm looking forward again to seeing all of you in the future. And we're thrilled. I just want to mention too that we're thrilled that so many of you are interested and ready for the fall. But we do need to, as you'll hear today, we are going to focus on safety and health, and we're very excited about having everyone come back, but our planning is one of which does take into account health and safety first, and it's very careful and thoughtful about how we'll do that. But it is our intent to have you here for the fall semester, so I want to make sure that's absolutely my desire to head in that direction, assuming that all things continue as we hope that they do.
Thank Thank you for sharing that. I know that enrollment numbers at colleges and universities across the country have been impacted by the pandemic, but it's really reassuring to know that Wentworth is in a place of strength and in some areas is actually stronger than in years past. Speaking of the health and safety and well-being being a priority for you, can you share some of the steps that we've taken to date that have demonstrated our commitment to health, well-being, and success of our students?
Sure, I'd be happy to. That's certainly been an interesting semester, to say the least, this past spring semester, and then going into the summer. I never anticipated coming into, you probably know this is, I'm completing my first year as president. I didn't expect to, and no college president expected to have to respond to a pandemic, but I'm very proud of the way in which we did respond. And it certainly reflects all the decisions we made, certainly reflects health and safety of our students as being our #1 priority. There were certainly tough decisions, but appropriate decisions to make sure that our students were both protected, but also that we would continue with their education in a way that was uninterrupted and also providing them services. So during the spring semester, we had several students. We have a program that has traditionally had students in Germany and in Ireland. So we brought them home from abroad and provided them a continuation of their education here. You probably know that right after spring break, we did make the decision to not have students come back because of the course of the pandemic and the trends at the time. And we also made the decision to have our summer semester be remote as well, to make sure that, again, students were healthy and safe, but had a mechanism and a way by which they could continue their education. We also adjusted our grade policy. We had an expression of concern from our students that moving from in-person to remote, not everyone was, not everyone has the same experience, I guess, and the same, or there were concerns about whether or not going that quickly from in-person to remote was going to cause any potential learning issues. So we decided to offer the option for a pass or no credit grading scheme. In addition to, that's an option, it was an option for students, it wasn't required. Students could continue with their traditional grading if they preferred, but we at least wanted to give some relief around some anxiety around grading. We did refund housing and meal plan monies for the spring semester on a prorated basis. We thought that was the appropriate and fair thing to do for our students. We have several student workers who rely on work study money for an income. Those students who could continue to do their work remotely were, of course, paid fully, but even for those who could not continue their work, we continued to pay them at a 3/4 rate. And we did have also, in anticipation of knowing that many of our students are going to need some support for various things, we did increase our fundraising efforts and focused it exclusively on raising funds that would be utilized to support students in time of need. We have a Student Emergency Fund, which has been long-standing, and we developed another fund for students, Wentworth Cares Fund. I'm happy to tell you that people, alumni, our business partners, corporate partners, and so forth, really stepped up to the plate, including our faculty and staff as well, to contribute to those funds. We had, for example, over 600 gifts on the day that was designated National Day of Giving. We called it Wentworth Cares Day. We had over 600 gifts come in support of our students for their various needs. So, but I do want to be clear that maintaining health and safety and the well-being of our Wentworth community is and will continue to be, as we go into the planning, continue our planning, go into the fall semester, the core consideration for any decision making that we'll have going forward.
Thank you. So President Thompson, let's move on to that topic of planning and decision making. You've begun a process to develop comprehensive scenario plans for our gradual return to campus. And you've said consistently that your goal is to restore on-campus operations for fall 2020 to every extent possible. Can you share more about that planning and decision process?
Sure, and thanks for the question. And when we get to your questions and answers, I hope that you'll recognize that there's probably many specifics that we'd like to have today. But we are going through a process which is very carefully thought through, so I can give you a general sense about the things we're taking into consideration. And then I will absolutely share with you, as details become known, that information for you. I recognize that this is a huge decision on the part of all of you and your families, And I want to make sure that we reduce the anxiety as much as we possibly can and be very clear about what our plans are so that you can ask questions or develop a sense of comfort around what those plans are. So more details will be forthcoming, but let me share what the process is now, just so you have a sense as to the types of things we're looking at, paying attention to as we go through this process. And again, overall, our decision making is first driven by health and safety considerations first. That's our primary concern, but it's followed by decisions that take into account, obviously, the impact on educational quality and the student experience. We want to make sure, to the extent possible, that all of you do have an experience that's the full college experience. So we'll work towards that. We do recognize that coming into the fall, it'll be a little bit different, but believe me, we'll get through this. It'll be a great experience for you. I'm absolutely confident of that. And I know we'll emerge on the other side of this and we'll see things continue to improve. But the process that we're taking, that's taking place over the summer, basically there's two phases to it. The phase one is a planning process, and then the second phase is an implementation process. And what we're doing is for the scenario planning and implementation process is we are being guided by someone who has expertise in business continuity and crisis response. He's a professional in the Boston area here, and he's facilitating all aspects of our work. And he has helped us to form 7 working teams that are comprised of faculty, staff, and others who can be helpful in this regard. But they're focused on very critical areas for planning. And they include students, so looking at all aspects of student life, student services, residential life, services that need to continue, obviously, with regard to health and mental wellness. We have an academic planning team that's looking at various options for delivering the academic programs, taking into account that an emphasis on in-person, for example, would be focused on labs and studios and so forth, and perhaps some hybrid delivery of some other courses that don't necessarily require people coming together. Faculty and staff, so taking a look at things that we need to have in place with regard to safety protocols for our faculty and staff. Campus infrastructure is huge. As I said, I'm here today because I want to have the chance to see personally all the spaces that we're taking a look at, need to take a look at in terms of learning space, living space, meeting space, workspace, and really have a personal understanding about the types of things that we need to put in place that would safeguard our faculty and staff. We have a financial and legal team taking a look at things. We have a communications team, which I think is doing an extraordinary job in supporting getting information out as it becomes available. And then we have a situation monitoring and tracking team that's paying attention to the trends with regard to the virus, as well as local and state health advisories that we need to take into account, pay attention to. So these 7 teams are going to submit their recommendations to me over the course of the next month. And I'm in charge, I'm leading a reentry planning team, which is comprised of members of my senior team. And then I'll make decisions based upon the input of all of these various groups that are doing this work. And I will also get guidance from our Director of Compliance and Risk Management, as well as our staff that's available to us in environmental health and safety and emergency management. So we're currently in the planning stage. We are evaluating the possible academic and residential living return to work models that allow for necessary physical distancing, as an example. And we're not going to finalize our decisions. I know everyone's anxious, I am too, to know where things are around July 1st, but I won't be able to give you a thorough answer or a definitive answer until around July 1st. And which is when most schools will be sharing, at least the colleagues I've spoken to, have been keeping in touch with many of my fellow presidents. That's pretty much the date that most schools are going to announce their plans more definitively. But that will give us, several crucial weeks to give consideration to all the things we need to from a health and safety standpoint, as well as an educational and student experience quality standpoint over the next several weeks, so we can make our decision. And then on July 1st, we'll have had the opportunity to have some appropriate time for monitoring of the COVID-19 infection levels, the assessment of those government public health advisories, and then ensuring we're prepared to successfully implement on that chosen direction. Once we get the plan in place by July 1 over the next several weeks, we'll then have 7 or 8 full weeks to make sure that everything that we need to do to implement that plan can begin.
So I just want to make sure I have this right. You've got these 7 teams who are doing the planning process right now, who will share recommendations to that leadership team that you are leading, being guided by a business continuity and crisis professional. You're receiving the right type of guidance that you feel you need to make the right decisions. And really, for all of us, that next sort of goalpost is really July 1st, when we'll be able to have a better understanding of what comes next. Does that sound right?
Yeah, exactly right. Once we decide how to proceed around July 1, then that pivot to phase 2. We'll have that 8 additional weeks to implement all the components of the plan we selected. And I will give you information on a regular basis, again, as I said before, in terms around specifics around what those plans are and how we are implementing on them, to make sure that you have a sense of comfort and understanding around what they are. But the planning and the things we need to implement, these things are things that will likely not surprise you, but I as a father myself, I would want to know that these things are being considered very carefully. So it's around testing protocol and capability, which is huge. Obviously, I'm sure you've heard that over and over again in various discussions about return to work and return to school plans, contact tracing, protocols and preparedness for requirements for wearing of masks and physical distancing in all of our spaces, facilities updates. So as I said, I've been working with our facilities team on the various upgrades that we'll need to make, or retrofitting that we'll need to do to make sure that our physical spaces are appropriately outfitted for physical distancing. Plans around disinfecting of buildings, more frequent cleaning of those. And also, obviously, we need to make sure that we're well prepared to provide you with your personal protective equipment. So we have planning and policies around that as well, just as some examples of some of the things that we're formulating detailed plans around.
That's really helpful. And these COVID-related aspects are so important, but we have also still managed to maintain campus traditions and programs and our commitment to our local community during this time as well.
Yeah, which has been, there are so many moments in a college education that I really enjoy and mean a lot to me, around things like commencement, for example, or celebrating accomplishments, award ceremonies, and so forth. And they certainly have a lot of meaning to our students. So we've done everything we can to offer opportunities for celebration. It's something we all need during this pandemic, is to have happy moments in our lives to the extent that we can. So we've gone out of our way to continue to provide every aspect of the Wentworth culture, particularly those that are celebratory in nature. So we did have a virtual toast for our April 2020 graduates. We had just recently a 100-day countdown, a virtual countdown for our August graduates. We have been able to continue our fitness and recreation programs online, student engagement opportunities, trivia, movie nights together, a variety of programs being offered for our students virtually. Our student organizations have continued their meetings and their work virtually as well, using technology. I'm also, I have to tell you that I am very proud of how our faculty and staff have stepped up in this time to really make sure that our students are well served. So our tutoring, advising, our student support groups have all continued to be available for students through virtual means. We've been able to continue to provide mental health services for our students. Library services have continued. And we're doing other things that again, it's a source of pride for me in terms of our faculty and staff. As an example, you may have read in the press that they came up on their own initiative a way to provide personal protective equipment to staff at Brigham and Women's Hospital, making those plastic face shields manufactured here on campus. So There's no shortage of activity, and all activity I would consider to be beneficial in the lives of our students. And as I said, I'm really thankful to our faculty and staff in the ways that they've responded to this particular situation that we're going through together.
There's definitely a lot to be proud of here at Wentworth. President Thompson, you've given us all good information about what the institution is doing, but now I'd like to switch to what our students and families should be doing in the meantime to make sure that they're prepared to join us this fall, because we have made some shifts there as well.
Right. So I would share with you that get ready. First of all, sign up for your orientation, which I think you'll find very, very helpful, and you'll find some good information there. Request your final transcripts. Submit your housing agreement if you haven't done so far, and schedule your immunizations to make sure that those are in shape. But if you didn't get a chance to write all that down, don't worry about it. Not a problem. That information is all in there's a section on the website about getting ready. So all those things are there. And also, I would encourage you to contact your admissions counselor. I know they'll be happy to help you. You may obviously have questions that are important to you and your family individually, and they're a great source of support. They will get right back to you in terms of making sure that your individual needs and individual families are taken care of.
Excellent. Thank you, President Thompson. I think it's about time for us to hear from our participants today, so we will open the question and answer portal. I think it's important, I think we all understand that we won't have definitive answers for every question that get asked because we're still in the middle of planning. But you'll notice the question and answer box should be open for questions. We're going to try our best to get through as many as possible today, but please know that our admissions staff is available to answer any questions that you might have. In particular, if you have a question that you believe is specific or unique to you, please reach out to your admissions counselor. You can find their contact information by going to www.wit.edu/admissions. And then you can click on the left-hand navigation column. There's a link there for our admissions counselor's contact information. So if you don't have it handy, that's the best way to find that there. So we'll get to questions here. It looks like we have some coming in. Our first question, do you foresee a change in start date or a move-in date?
So thank you for that question. I don't right now, but that's not to say that, this, I hope you appreciate this does remain a fluid situation. We need to continue to monitor. And I will tell you that I would hope, I'm asking for your continued support and patience, even on July 1st. Things may go in a direction we didn't anticipate. No one can anticipate that we may have to, make some adjustments along the way. But as of now, we're focused on the same start date. And one of the things we are considering, just so you know, is probably an extension of the opportunity to bring your belongings here. So that not everyone is moving all at the same time, as an example of one of the things we're considering. But I'll give you plenty of notice about that decision. I promise I'll do that and give you the appropriate details. But as of now, no projected change in start date.
Great. Our next question is from Karen and asks, in the unfortunate event my student is only offered virtual learning in the fall, will you consider deferment to the spring semester?
Yes, you can defer to the spring semester. I'm obviously, like all of you, hoping that that's not a direction we need to go with remote learning. But yes, if it turns out that we do have to make that decision, you can defer until the spring semester, absolutely.
Right. Our next question, with all the reopening planning taking place, is there a contingency plan being made in the event of a second wave of infections and closures?
Yes, thanks for that question. That's really important. A lot of the planning that we're doing is taking into account, and this is an important thing for us. People are all over the place and not able to predict what's going to happen. There's speculation about the potential of a second wave and so forth, but none of us really knows. But in the event that it does happen, we are including in our planning what we would do in response to a second wave of infections and the potential for closure. Some of the planning is if you have a small, I'm hoping we don't have an outbreak, obviously, but if you have a small outbreak on campus, that doesn't necessarily mean that all we have to close. But what we have to do is to have milestones and measures in place that would necessitate a response at varying levels. And but that is something we are definitely taking a look at.
Great. Question from William, who asks, will ramp still happen, and if so, how?
So yes, William, I'm really glad to hear from you. The ramp program is fantastic. I can't wait to meet you at some point, but it will happen. And I can tell you the answer to that part. Unfortunately, I can't tell you the answer to your second part quite yet. But it is possible. So one of the things, if you had a chance to see today, Wednesday was the date in which the Higher Education Reentry Planning Group made public its advice or recommendations to the Governor's Reopening Board. And one of the things in there was that in phase 2 there was some possibility of doing some small summer programs. And as you know, RAMP is a program that we've done traditionally in the summer, right before the start of school. So please stay tuned. I'd like to make sure I give you the correct answer in terms of how we're going to do it, but we will have the program one way or the other.
Our next question, and President Thompson, this speaks to some of what you've been doing on campus today. How will the classroom be altered for safety?
So that's what we're going. That's one part of the important process we're going through right now. So we're looking at the capacity for each room to make sure we can have appropriate physical distancing with at least a 6-foot space. We're putting in place in areas that have tables, the plexiglass plastic barriers. We're looking at barriers for the faculty up at the front who's doing the speaking, a lot of the talking in the room. Looking at entry and egress as an example, using flexible configurations that can change to make sure that for a particular type of class, it's the appropriate configuration to maintain safety. Looking at the ventilation system in each of the rooms, making arrangements with regard to cleaning on a regular, much more often than we normally do. So there's a variety of things that are taking place right now that will ensure that we have safety measures in place for learning spaces. And again, you'll have more detailed information on that forthcoming as soon as we have the plan to publish in place.
Our next question asks, if it happens to be that the fall semester needs to be online, will you send us our computers to be able to do our classes?
Yes.
Excellent. Easy.
I can answer that efficiently. Yeah. Yes, but we will. We will distribute them so you receive them at home. Yes.
I think this next question is another one that we may not have answers to just quite yet, but what is going to happen with sports if we still have to social distance in the fall? And I believe the athletic conferences are beginning to discuss this at this point, correct?
Right. So that conversation is taking place at the conference level. So we have the athletic directors for each of our conference member schools in discussion as a group, and then we have the presidents for each of those institutions in discussion as well. So unfortunately, I can't give you a definitive answer right now, but it is something that is under discussion by those two groups. But as soon as we have an answer that gives you some clarity, I'll make sure that we get the information out to you. But more to come on that.
Next question, do you plan to change how you allocate students to dorms to decrease crowding?
That's part of the planning process we're going through right now. So to take a look at the ways in which we can not only de-densify living spaces, but the learning spaces and other spaces as well, and come up with a determination on how many students we can accommodate in various spaces and do it safely and so forth. But we're taking a look at everything, the communal spaces, the bedroom spaces, the bathroom capacity, all around safety standards that we're planning around. So yes, we are taking a look at that. And again, I I hope that you're not put off by the promise for more detail, but I think it's important that we do it the right way in terms of our planning and make sure you get the appropriate information that's accurate once it's available, and we'll get that out to you. But yes, that is part of the planning for sure.
Great, and you anticipated some of the elements of the next question, which asked specifically about, number of roommates and bathrooms and that. So again, stay tuned for additional information, but certainly that distancing piece is applying not just to public places and classrooms, but certainly residence halls as well. The next question is a kind of a fun one. What breed is your dog?
Thanks for a fun question. Obviously, this situation necessitates a lot of serious conversation, so it's nice to thanks for bringing a smile to my face. I really appreciate it. He is a Beagle Shih Tzu mix, and he's a fantastic dog. He just had his 10th birthday, and he's my little guy. He sticks with me by my side. So thanks for asking that question. But hopefully you'll get a chance to meet him too. Never mind me. It'd be nice to meet Brady. He's a great guy.
Absolutely. Next question is, when will orientation take place? And so I know we're moving elements of it virtually so that it can still take place this summer, right?
Right. Yeah. So my understanding is it's still going to take place in June, as would normally be the case, but it will be virtual. And I think that our student affairs staff has shared that information in terms of it going virtual, but it will take place in June.
Great. Okay. Next question. What's something you're currently working on to improve student life outside of COVID, and what improvement have you made so far that you're most proud of?
So thanks for that question. I really appreciate it. One of the things you'll find when you have the chance to come on campus and interact with me is I'm around a lot. So one of the things I've done on a regular basis, and will promise certainly to do with all of you, is to provide substantial opportunities for interaction. Because we're all here for you, and I'm certainly committed to the things that are most important to you and your college experience. So, and they have the opportunities for understanding what's most important to students in terms of the improvements we can make are, I have an open door policy. I love it when a student stops by at my office, and I tell people if the door is open, please come in and interrupt me. I'm here, and very happy to be interrupted in my day to talk to a student. You'll find me on campus a lot, so I can have a chance to interact with you. And then we have more formal opportunities to engage in conversations. So I would say that by itself is what I would consider to have been an improvement. And I've learned so much in those interactions from our students, not only about what they would like to see us understand and know about their college experience, but I am just so impressed by the quality of the work of our students, their creativity, and just how committed they are to their goals. So I would say that's what I've been most proud of, is in terms of student life, is working to understand what's most important to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question has to do with our hands-on majors and classes. So how would online classes work with hands-on majors? And I know you've had, learned of some really incredible ways that our faculty in the spring and currently in the summer semester are working with studios and other classes that typically would be more hands-on in the same space, but doing great work virtually.
Right. Yeah. So again, I'm hoping that that's not the direction we'll be going in the fall. But what I have observed is, as we've made this transition, it's actually extraordinary in terms of what people are accomplishing virtually and through other means. So I know, for example, our architecture students, what they're doing with their virtual studios, it's extraordinary work. And I'm very impressed by the quality of what I'm seeing there. Virtual labs are something that has been successful. And then helping to set up students, in some cases, conduct a lab at home. Nothing dangerous with chemicals or anything like that, but doing some things at home. For example, At the kitchen sink. So we have had success in those, but that's the portion, the hands-on piece, which is a hallmark of our educational experience and so important to your development, is one that we're focusing a lot of attention on in terms of our primary goal being that we can do it in person safely, the right outfitting of classrooms and so forth. So again, if we have to go remote, we'll do it very, very well. I'm hoping that that's not the case, and you should plan on, at least this point, having those hands-on majors as you would expect within the labs and studios.
Great, thank you. We have a question that asks if we're planning to have housing areas for 6 students as part of our plan.
Yes, so part of the planning right now is taking care of students if they do become sick, which also would mean unique housing, isolation for a sick student, and making sure that we're providing the appropriate care, obviously. One of the benefits of where we are in the Longwood medical area is we have extraordinary health care within a few minutes walk. So we're working with our health partners to make sure that we're well prepared in the event that anything did occur. But yes, we are planning for some capacity for isolation of students if we need to go that route.
Great. The next question is from Gina, and Gina asks, if we don't reopen, will you refund our housing deposit?
What we're doing, from what I understand, we're allowing students to defer. Is that right? Defer to the spring? Courtney, will you correct me if I'm incorrect?
Yes, I believe that is, yeah, I believe that's correct.
Okay. And yes, as I said, we'll send the laptop. I answered that one before, I believe. No problem.
Okay, here's a question. You talked about the hallmark being our hands-on education. Co-op is certainly right there with that. So how has COVID affected co-op programs such as those for a construction management major? Have or will students graduate on time? Are there any considerations for the future to try to ensure successful completion where possible? And that question is from Neil.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. I appreciate it. One of the things we worked very hard to make sure that we did to support our students was to make sure that there was no disruption to their progress in completing their degree requirements, including the co-ops. So we were in constant contact with our co-op employers. Many of them either allowed students to work remotely. So that was, it was great to allow students to do that so they could continue to work and do it in a safe environment. And then in some cases, we did have to come up with some alternative co-ops. And for example, here in our Accelerate program and the entrepreneurship program, students were engaged in substantive projects there that represented their co-op requirement being fulfilled. So one of the things I want to assure all of you is that you will not be disrupted in any way, at least from our end of the bargain, in terms of your progression towards timely completion of your degree, and that includes your co-op experience. And we've been having conversations with our co-op employers for the fall, and I'm very optimistic about what I'm hearing back in terms of their plans for hiring and supporting the co-op program. So I'm glad you had that, really glad you asked that question, but I hope that alleviates any of your concerns around that. We'll make sure that you have a good co-op opportunity.
Max is wondering if there's any possibility of just freshmen coming to campus in the fall. If so, will they be moved to the apartment style dorm? So anything about just a single class coming back versus cross section of academic years?
Yeah, Max, I appreciate your question because every time I check into a hotel, I always ask for an upgrade. So this is, so thanks for putting that out there, asking for a housing upgrade. So right now, everything's being discussed as a possibility. So I can't say no to your question. And then if that is the case, well, certainly it obviously would have been made because it's what we need to do in terms of a level of dedensifying. So I'm assuming students would be spread more across residence halls, including the apartment style. But I would say that freshmen only right now is probably a remote, not, I shouldn't use that term, is probably a slight possibility. So I wouldn't count on that being the case, but it is something that has been discussed, I know, by the academic planning group and our student group. So again, more to come in terms of the details around that.
Our next question comes from someone who must have come through Beatty Hall on a tour because they are wondering, what are the precautions being taken for food in Beatty Hall?
So we're working with our Chartwells now, and they are doing a full analysis of the changes they need to make to the physical space. Obviously, there will be no more buffet type, self-serve types of things, so there'll be grab and go for the most part. And also I know that they're working on a mobile app so you can order and don't have to wait in line to get your food, so you can do grab and go that way. But there's a lot going on there in terms of safety, and I know that the conversation planning continues, and again, that will be included in the detailed information you all get, we'll all get in the near term.
Our next question is a popular one. It has 15 thumbs up on it. And so the question is, will students need to be tested prior to returning to campus? If so, will Wentworth be providing the tests? And I know, President Thompson, that's something we spoke about just yesterday in our meeting, looking at testing and what that could look like. So what are your initial thoughts there?
So my initial thoughts are that, yes, students will need to be tested prior to returning to campus. I think that's consistent with our expectations around what we would be doing with regard to health and safety. And I can't answer the second part quite yet because we're working with some of our other university partners as well as some healthcare providers on how we're going to do testing, not only in terms of the testing required to come back to campus, but what the testing will look like going forward throughout the semester. And I want to make sure it's done on best practices. It's not something that I take lightly in terms of needing to be very thorough in that planning. So I would say yes to your first question. And then the second question, we're working out the details now in terms of who will provide those tests, and then again, what the testing protocols and practices will be throughout the semester.
Great. We have just two more questions. So the first is from Jess, who asks, are there any plans for correcting those who don't comply with the social distancing guidelines?
Yeah, you skipped one there, Courtney. I just want to make sure. Is there anyone I can contact and email personally if I have further questions? So I would, again, if you see on the slide that you should see there now has the address for the admissions counselors. So I would reach out to that email address there, or that go to that and you'll find the a way to get that. Oh, I'm sorry, Justin answered it. Yep. Correcting those who don't comply with social distancing guidelines. So one of the things the student group is working on in particular, the working group around students, is a set of policies with regard to our expectations and behavior of not only students, but also the faculty and staff group is working on this as well. So one of the I'm glad you asked that question, Jess, because I think this is very important. We're going to do everything we possibly can to make sure that we're putting in place the appropriate safety measures and following through on them. But we're only going to be successful if every one of our students commits to doing the same thing. So much of our success around the fall semester and how it goes is going to depend on individuals in terms of choices that they make and adhering to the things that we put in place for safety reasons. So yes, there will be plans for ensuring that students adhere to those safety protocols. There's an important reason why they're in place, and I really need everyone, members of our community, to take responsibility to make sure that we do ensure everyone's safety and continuation of our semester in the ways that we all hope that we can experience.
Absolutely. Thank you everyone for your questions. We received nearly 200 questions during our time together today, and we regret that we can't answer all of them, but please don't hesitate to reach out to your admissions counselor if there's anything that we can help you with. We do want to do that And before we wrap up today, President Thompson, I know you're planning on staying connected with this group throughout the summer. You've said that. Any last thoughts before we close out today?
So I will, as I promised several times, I probably said it 20 times today, but I will give you timely information as the work of the teams evolves, so you all kept up to date. So we know that there's still many questions to be answered for all of you, so I appreciate that. Believe me, I would have those exact same questions if I were you, so I'll make sure that we do all we can to get back to you. I just wanted to say again, congratulations to all of you. This is a very, very special place in many ways. I'm finishing up my first year. I found it to be a very supportive atmosphere. People are very committed to success, appropriately student-centered, which I've seen consistently displayed by our faculty and staff. And I have every confidence that you will thrive here. And I just am so anxious for that day that I can see you face to face and greet you and understand who you are, what your goals and aspirations are, the way in which I could play a positive role in the achievement of those goals. But I hope that, again, as I said, you're all doing well. I know that particularly of those families who are sending their first child off to college, that always creates some concern, and particularly the situation we're in adds to it. But we need to work together. I'm confident we will be successful and that we'll get on the other side of this thing for sure at some point. But I'm very optimistic about the future and just, as I said, just thrilled at the prospect of meeting you face to face at some point in the not too distant future. So take good care of yourselves, hang in there, finish strongly in terms of if you haven't finished your high school requirements yet. But I just wish you all the best. So thank you again for this time.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, President Thompson.